What it's like to have lived through this time as someone who's blind, it's kind of, um, it's it's going to be in the form of a journal. So it is really what it was like to go through this as someone that's blind. Because I think the disability voice was not prominent when people were talking throughout this time. You know, they wouldn't think about, well, what if you're blind and you can't drive to a COVID testing site? What are you supposed to do? You're supposed to inflict yourself on public transit or on cab drivers or what? You know, like there'd be things that would come up almost all the time. And we would say, well, wait a minute, how are we supposed to do that? Or what are we supposed to do with this? So there's a lot about, well, there's a lot about how I navigate around my world and what impact COVID had on that. So my various senses, it was harder to smell with the mask on. It was harder to do echolocation with the mask. So just how I get around and what impact that had on how I could get around and how I had to adapt. Of course, the guide dog story. So the story of what happened and what didn't happen and when I finally got my dog and how that happened. And because it's a very interesting kind of story that went sort of minute by minute, hour by hour. Is this going to happen? Is it not going to happen? It's kind of, you know, exciting. Just how people function, how people adapted, and how people lived through the time. So even like the convoy, because I live right downtown Ottawa, so the trucks were all here right around me all the time for however many weeks. Yeah, just I think just it's a snapshot of someone living through it, and we all have had our different challenges living through it. But I think it's really important for people to understand, if you have, you know, this disability, these are the things that were hard or that were easy, and these, we all lived through this. We all had to adapt. And what are the things I needed to do, you know, to adapt? Well, everyone will have to come to the show to know everything, but I would say it sort of changed the way that you had to navigate around in the world. So a lot of the ways that you normally would do things were not available to me. So I touched things a lot, and for a while at the beginning, touch was forbidden out in public, or you weren't supposed to touch your groceries even. You weren't supposed to touch anything without gloves. You weren't supposed to, you know, touch elevator buttons. But I need to feel things to know what they are. I need to feel things to read things. So that was something. Hearing, there were fewer people out, which was good in one way, in that you know, you could move around freely, but it meant also there was less traffic, so you couldn't read traffic to know when the lights were changing. There was a lot of X's were on the floor, which I could never see those, so I didn't know where to stand. One-way aisles, of course, I wouldn't know that. I wouldn't know plexiglass. It was hard to hear where people were when they were behind that. There were all kinds of things that just changed, and I think that was the case for everybody. I guess one of the biggest things though was I was waiting for a dog at the beginning of COVID, and this sort of goes to the whole story. I guess it doesn't matter what I do with storytelling; it always ends up being about the dog somehow. But when I just before COVID hit, I was supposed to get a dog that spring, so the spring of 2020, and of course, guide dog training was kind of stopped because everything was closed, and you know, my school is in the US, so the borders were closed, and you know, so stuff happened, and I didn't get a dog until last September 2021. So that was like, I think 2 years almost exactly to the day since I was accepted, which that never happens, right? So I spent that time without a dog, with a cane, with my retired dog, which was nice that she was around for that time when I could just take her for walks. But that was really hard because then I didn't know when I would get a dog, and I didn't know, you know, I think there were so many surprises. And I think the thing is to look, when I looked back on things that I wrote sort of near the beginning of the pandemic, because I would look back on things that I kind of wrote down, at the beginning or at times, and I would think, oh, we thought this was bad, or we thought this was really strange. So that was kind of surprising to kind of look back and think, because at the beginning they said, okay, you'll have a dog in 4 months, because I'm sure the borders will be open and we'll come in. And I was like, at the time, it's like 4 months. How can I wait 4 months? But I ended up waiting, so much longer than that. So that was kind of surprising to kind of look back and to remember, this is what I was feeling at this time. Oh, we didn't know we were in for like a long, long haul. Like, oh, I might have to work from home for like 2 weeks or something. You know what I mean? And then it was like, wow, like this is still going on. So that stuff kind of surprised me to kind of go back. I guess the other things that surprised me were the kind of real roller coaster of emotions and thoughts. And I think everybody has had that. But it would be kind of, on the one hand, you're feeling great and happy, and then all of a sudden, but wait a second here, you don't know that you're actually going to get a dog, because what if you test positive for COVID, or the trainer tests, or the something, you know what I mean? So it's all these just not being sure what's around the corner kind of stuff still persists through it. So that kind of surprised me, sort of the mixed emotions. I mean, I don't think it should have, but it was kind of surprising a bit. That was